Okay, so let's talk about the Portuguese subjunctive. Does it ever feel like this just impossible mountain you have to climb? Yeah, you're not alone. But what if I told you there's one simple tool that pretty much flattens that mountain right out? Well, that's what we're going to do today. Let's get into it.
And really, it all comes down to this one kind of crazy question. How is it that one tiny little word, no, can just completely change the entire sentence that comes after it? The answer, you'll see, is actually super simple. And honestly, it's the secret to sounding way more natural when you speak Portuguese.
So here's the secret. We're calling it the certainty switch. And really, this is the one big idea you've got to get. Just picture a light switch in your mind, right? You flip it on for certainty, and you flip it off for doubt. That's it. That's the whole game when it comes to the subjunctive.
Seriously? This slide right here? This is everything. This is the whole key. When you say something affirmative, you're basically saying, this is a fact. You're certain about it. So you use the normal indicative mood. But the second you make that sentence negative, boom, you've just introduced doubt, and that flips the switch over to the subjunctive. Certainty, doubt. It's that simple.
All right, so let's put this theory to the test, shall we? We're going to start with some super common verbs of opinion. You know, stuff like I think, I believe, and we're just going to watch this certainty switch work its magic.
Okay, first up, a pretty straightforward opinion. Acho que ela está com febre. So, acho que means I think that. From your point of view, you're stating this as a reality, as something you're certain about. So the verb stays in the indicative. Ela está. Simple enough, right?
But now, watch what happens when we just add that one little word, no. No acho que. I don't think. All of a sudden, you're expressing doubt, right? You've just flipped that certainty switch to the off position. And look, the verb instantly changes to the subjunctive, esteja. Are you starting to see the pattern here?
Let's do another one, just to make sure. Creo que hoje fico em casa. So creo que means I believe that. Again, you're making a statement of personal certainty. It's what you believe to be true. So the verb is indicative, fico. It's presented like a fact.
And then, here we go again. We add that now. No creo que. I don't believe. And just like that, certainty is out the window, doubt rushes in, and bam, the verb flips to the subjunctive, fique. This pattern is so consistent. And I'm telling you, once you see it, you're going to see it everywhere.
Okay, so at this point you might be thinking, all right, I get it for verbs of opinion, but does this work for anything else? And the answer, which is great news, is yes. The exact same logic, the same switch, works for expressions that are all about certainty, like saying something is true or obvious.
É verdade que ele come mais que o irmão. So, é verdade que literalmente means it's true that. I mean, you can't get more certain than that, right? So, of course, the verb is in the indicative, come, he eats, it's a fact.
So what happens when we negate that truth? No é verdade que. Now we're casting doubt on that fact. We're saying it's not true. So what happens? That's right, the switch gets flipped, and the verb has to change to the subjunctive, calma.
All right, let's really lock this concept in with one more crystal clear example. É evidente que ela está a mentir. É evidente que means it's evident that. It's obvious. You're making a statement of total certainty. So the verb is indicative. Está. She is lying. Case closed.
And for the last time in this section, what happens when we introduce doubt? No é evidente que. It's not evident. We're questioning that certainty. The switch flips, just like clockwork, and the verb becomes the subjunctive esteja. It really is that predictable.
Okay, you've seen the pattern over and over. I think you've got this. So now it's your turn. It's time to test out your new grammar superpower. I'm going to give you a question, and all I want you to do is think about how you'd answer it negatively using our little certainty switch.
All right, ready? Imagine someone comes up to you and asks, Achas que devo falar com ele? Do you think I should talk to him? And you want to answer, no, I don't think you should talk to him. How are you going to say that? Go on, take a second and think about it.
And there it is. Não acho que devas falar com ele. You nailed it, because you started with não acho. You introduced doubt, so the verb dever had to flip to the subjunctive devas. If you got that right, seriously, great job.
Okay, let's do one more just for good measure. Here's the question. ¿Piensas que la respuesta está correcta? Do you think the answer is correct? And let's say you don't. You want to say, I don't think the answer is correct. So, what's that verb going to change to? Yes, exactly. Não penso que a resposta esteja correta. That negative, não penso que, is the trigger for doubt, which flips the verb está, right into the subjunctive esteja. See? You are totally getting the hang of this.
All right, so we've broken down the theory, we've seen a bunch of examples, and you've even had a chance to practice it yourself. Now, let's just boil this all down to one super simple, really powerful takeaway.
Look, here's all you have to remember. If it's an affirmative statement, acho que or é verdade que, it signals certainty. You use the normal indicative. The second you see a negative, no acho que or no é verdade que, that signals doubt. You flip the switch and use the subjunctive. That's it. That is your grammar superpower in a nutshell.
And you know, that kind of leaves us with one last thing to think about. This whole thing, it's not just about boring grammar rules, right? It's really about how we communicate. The subjunctive is the language of nuance, of being polite, of subjectivity. So next time you're having a conversation, just notice it. Think about how choosing between certainty and doubt really shapes the entire feel of what you're saying. It's pretty interesting stuff. Thanks so much for joining me.